Hey guys, Barry Rudden here, your insurance sales mentor with I don't know if it's a rant or a plea. So let's just talk about it and we'll see which one it is. If there's one topic I hear people ask me about every single day, it's objections. And I'm sure a good part of your day is spent handling objections. One of the things that surprises me is people will go years and years and years hearing the same objections, but being stymied, stopped, delayed, stalled by the same objections and never take the time to figure out a way to deal with those and lose so much business and so much opportunity and just accept that that's a normal part of the business. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. You do not have to suffer the business destroying effects of objections that cannot be overcome. What you need is a process to first avoid those objections in the first place, and then if they come up anyway, then have a process to professionally and skillfully handle them in a way that is not pushy, it's not salesy, it's not aggressive, and it fits with human nature, and it's very respectful, and it gets the person to say, oh, okay, I can see things your way. All right. And in other videos, we talk about objection avoidance. What I want to talk about is the objection handling process right now. One of the first things I'll tell you is that all of us, myself included, and I've been doing this a very long time, we all get the punch in the stomach. We hear the objection and we get this emotional punch in the stomach of, oh, the objection came up. You know, I don't have any need for this. I don't have any interest for this. I have this at work. I don't want to talk about this. Can we talk about this after the summer, after the kids are back in school, after Thanksgiving, after Christmas, after the New Year, after the leap year, after Valentine's Day, after St. Patrick's Day? It's just endless, right? And we all get a little defeated. We all get a little deflated. And we have this punch in the stomach. You must train yourself to not allow that emotional reaction to carry further than just that instantaneous brief little moment, because there's no way you're not going to have a quick internal reaction of, dang it. We're all going to have that. The question is, what do you do after that? Do you freeze up, or do you sort of relax into it and say, okay, no problem here. I've heard this before. It's not my first rodeo. I know how to handle it. So I'm going to introduce a term to you that is a play on a word that you're probably familiar with, a term that you're probably familiar with, and that is poker stomach. You've probably heard of poker face. Poker face is when you're playing poker and you just got dealt 3 aces. You don't go, wow, because nobody's going to bet, they're just going to all fold, right? So we keep that stoic, no emotion showing on the face, poker face, so that everybody puts all their chips in and then you win all their money. Poker face can't happen until you have poker stomach. And what I mean by that is you don't overreact to the initial objection. You control those emotions. You don't express it, certainly outwardly. You don't go, oh, okay? And you then immediately move to engage your objection handling process with the client. And what would that look like? What would that sound like? Well, it's actually really very simple. What you want to do is first stop selling. You can't continue to sell through an objection. It has to be addressed. So just stop selling, relax, poker stomach, poker face, and immediately move to the next step, which is sort of a 2-part. And the first part is, do not respond to the objection with a statement. Do not argue. Do not debate, because they're going to win, okay? We always start out, always, with a question, not a statement. And it's usually a very short question, and it's a question of clarification. What do you mean by that? Can you explain that a little further? Where does that thought or feeling come from? This way, they have to talk and they have to explain. People are very used to having a knee-jerk reaction of objection. They may not even mean it, but they're just so conditioned to put up the hand and say, I don't need that. I don't want that. I'm not interested. I already have that covered. If we ask them a short clarifying question, at least if we're going to be handling the objection, we know what the actual objection is. We can't assume we know what they mean. So we want to ask a short clarifying question. Now that we know the actual objection is, we need to verify our understanding, right? We're almost reflecting back to them that either, we're validating what they're saying or verifying what they're saying as, so if I understand you correctly, Steve, what you're saying here is, and then we fill in the blank with that. This way, you are expressing empathy and respect. You're not just trying to steamroll over them. What you're saying is, do I understand what you're saying? Have I heard you properly? That step alone is going to diffuse a lot of the intense emotions most people bring into objection handling because they expect you to fight. And now you're not fighting, you're asking clarifying questions, you're trying to gain understanding. And sometimes we ask those short questions and then we have to follow those with a little bit longer question to help the client really explain what they mean, because they may not even be connected to why they're saying what they're saying. Once we understand what it is they're saying, then we need to, at that point, probably provide some education. Now, the problem is that most people try and provide the education the moment the client objects. So they haven't stopped selling, they're almost trying to keep selling, and they try and give the client all this extra information, which is not going to work. You have to do the ask component, you have to do the verification or validation component. Education doesn't mean tell them more about the product, or tell them why the product is great, or tell them why they need the product. Educate is to help give them a perspective change on what they objected to. Now we can educate. Now we can give a story. We can give a new perspective. We can give an example. We can give a analogy. We can do something that educates the client specifically to address what they said was bothering them or what they were anticipating. And once we've done that, we should try to resume the process, either basically ask permission to continue on. With that in mind, Steve, can we continue our conversation? Let me give you an example. Let's say the objection is, you're just going to try and sell me something. That's a pretty challenging statement, right? The client's effectively saying, you don't care about me. You're just some salesperson, and you're just going to try and force something on me that I don't want and I don't need. Now, I believe that the true objection handling ace almost hopes the client says stuff like that. I know I do. I'm like, bring it on. Because first of all, I know I don't do that. I know I don't sell people things they don't need. And the objection itself almost gives me the opportunity to put myself in a better light. And that clarification of our relationship actually calms them down and has them work with me better. I'm almost hoping they say that. So here's the really interesting thing. You could dread that objection, right? You could get that objection 100 times and not know how to deal with it, and it would continue to hurt your career and your earnings and such. Or you can say, you know what? I'm going to embrace that objection. I hope I get that objection. I'm not afraid of that objection anymore. And I know how to address it. I know how to handle it in a way that makes me look good and makes the client feel good and continues our conversation. What would that sound like? It would sound something like this. The client says, you know what, Barry, you're just going to try and sell me something. So I hear the objection. I stop selling. I ask them what they mean. And that might sound like, well, where does that thought or feeling come from? Or it could be, have you had that experience in the past from someone else? See, these are the kind of questions that get the person to actually have to give us a real tangible additional piece of information that we can address. Well, yeah, I've been to other people and they've done this and they've done that, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, oh, you know what? I'm so glad you shared that with me. This is the educate part. I'm so glad you shared that with me, because that's never going to happen here. I can promise that no one will ever leave this agency with anything that they didn't need, want, and ask us to put in place for them to protect them from an actual gap in their risk management program. With that in mind, with that promise and commitment from me, can we resume our conversation? And the client's like, well, sure, I guess so. Yeah, that would be great. So I'm really happy they asked the question because it got me to actually kind of talk about my process in a way that made me really look really good and diffuse their objection. So if you have a process, then objections aren't a big deal anymore. Objections could almost be something you look forward to. I hope they say they don't have a need. I hope they say they don't have any interest. I hope they say, you're just going to give me, you're just going to pressure me into buying something I don't need. Because I'm like, wow, this gives me a whole new opportunity to reposition how they think about what I do and why I'm different than anything else they've experienced. I started out this video talking about the fact that objections and objection handling is one of the things that I deal with on a daily basis with my agents, my client agents, and how painful it is really for me to see so many people suffering, not just the agent, but the sales staff that works for the agent. They may be facing even more of that because they don't have the sort of the aura and credibility that the agent naturally has when their name is on the door, as opposed to being just a licensed agent in the agency. A big part of my motivation is to make that pain go away. I don't want people to suffer unnecessarily, meaning you as the agents, and I don't want the client to go unprotected. The reason I do the work I do is because it allows me to leverage what I know and what I've learned through other people like you to help more people protect themselves the way they should be protected. And if they're going to just object and you're not going to know how to handle the objection, then nobody's going to get helped and nobody's going to make any money, and that's not good for anybody. And so I talk a lot about objection handling and objection avoidance to make your life easier. So really try to apply this concept, as you go forward, to really be aware of your poker stomach, be aware of your poker face. And when you hear an objection, stop selling, ask some questions, get some clarification, validate and verify that you understand what they're actually saying, and then educate them in a way that's actually helping them to feel good about what you're doing and what the potential for them is and what the risks to them are, so that they will resume talking to you and continue that conversation and you don't get stuck. If this was helpful for you, please like this video. Please comment below what your takeaways were and what your action steps are going to be to actually implement what we talked about. Please subscribe to the channel, and if you'd like to get notified on the release of new videos, please click the little bell icon and you'll get notified. Have a super sales day.